Well, hi, and welcome back to the Healthy Metal Hippie. Today we are here with Rob from American Global. They are an incredible and fast growing insurance brokerage based out of New York, and Rob is coming to us from New York today. So, welcome, Rob. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's quite an honor.
You know what? I'm very, very excited about it because we just recently got connected, and you know what? It seems like you are making waves in the construction industry, in the insurance industry, but not really about construction or insurance, but about mental health and the impact that it has on everybody's life every single day.
Yeah, I mean, there's. Thank you for mentioning that. As just mental health and suicide prevention. It's really taken a big focus. Especially over the past several years. With a lot that's going on in people's lives. So there has been a big focus shifted in construction, and it's very exciting.
Yeah. And so you have, like a lot of us listening, by me personally, you have also had an impact on your life from suicide directly. Do you want to share a little bit of your story?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think we probably don't realize it, but so many people around us have been impacted by suicide. I know with me, it's been relatives, it's been friends growing up, even colleagues. You know, and so really, I would say growing up, um, I lost friends while I was a teenager. And I didn't really connect several of the dots until later on about some of the trauma that they were through. But even, with relatives, my mother lost both a brother and a sister to suicide while they were in their 50s, and I saw the impact that that had to their children, and one of the things I've learned over the past several years is through research, I found out that the number three, actually, I talk to people about three, and I'll tell you what it means to me is when somebody
Hmm.
dies by suicide, their children become three times more likely to take their own lives. So it's just, how do we break that cycle? Um, and one of my best friends, he actually struggles from, his own mental health challenges on a daily basis. And I
Right.
think it's very important learned how to, pick up on some of the cues, how to tune into people, or just, how to observe. And, the big thing with my friend is that he has four beautiful children, and
Right.
that number three, when I look at my friend, I don't want there to be this like,
The continuing cycle, right? Where I mean, it does seem to follow, whether it results in suicide or, there's ongoing mental health struggles that you face from it. I've talked a little bit, maybe touched on it in some of my previous episodes, but I lost my brother to suicide when I was 7. Um, he was just shy 5 days of his 18th birthday. And, you know, it's been, I guess, yeah, it's this year will be 30 years. And but it's shocking because 30 years later I see that it still has an impact on me. I still, you know, I well just we're not going to go into a therapy session here, but I know as a child I blamed myself for a long time for his death. And that, you know, that was obviously not right. There was something much bigger going on than just having an annoying little sister, right? But sometimes it takes us years if we ever do fully process that kind of loss, I think. Have you noticed that too in anybody you've worked with or people yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when people can't process things, and they carry that weight with them, it certainly affects them, in different ways. And for some people that I've noticed is, it affected their own marriage. And, I'm talking about, just like you're saying, decades later,
Mhm.
until they're able to get some, professional help, to process it, because, really we all have our own problems. Now, when you add on suicide from somebody close to you, that it's just, not only is it devastating, but, it really takes a toll on somebody.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. And again, it impacts so much more than just that immediate family too, right? It seems to send ripples out through, extended family, through friends of friends of friends, people are just impacted. It hits a whole community when it happens, really. And I often find that there's not enough support when it does happen. And also, I'm glad it's changing, I think, but there's still, I don't think, a lot of discussion around, suicide prevention, really.
I think, just like you said, after somebody dies by suicide, there's, it's very sensitive. Like, people don't know how to react to it either. Like, if somebody loses somebody by suicide, other people in the network, they don't know how to approach them, and it's just, there's a shock. People are,
Yes.
they happened. It's just, how do you train somebody to be ready, for somebody close to them taking their life? It's just, it's something where, just like you said, you have a lot of people who are feeling, guilt from not doing something,
Yeah.
from, or there's even, um, forgive, I've been told that, until somebody really forgives somebody else from dying by suicide, or even forgiving themselves,
Mhm.
for, feel like, hey, I didn't do enough. But how do you know? You're not a doctor. You're not, you haven't been trained. And when it happens to you personally, how are you really prepared? And I think people take on a lot of guilt, and I think that's, like you're saying, part of the mental health that keeps on going through those shock waves. Um, how do people handle it? And that's a real challenge. I mean, I don't have those answers.
No, and I truly don't think that, you could train until you're blue in the face, but I truly don't think you could ever prepare somebody to lose someone they love like that or somebody from their community. It's interesting you bring that up too about doing more, a little bit different circumstance, but I also lost my best friend in 2017, but it was by overdose actually, and that's a whole other very very tragic story. But she moved away, and just a whole bunch of stuff happened. And honestly, when she passed away, I I thought, God, I should have done more. I should have gone out to see her. I should have done this or that. But it was actually her family that was like, stop. You could not have prevented this. And I unfortunately I do think there are times where you can't prevent something like that, or prevent a suicide. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm not sure. I could be very wrong about that. But I think if you are, you know, you might not be able to prevent it, and if you can accept that, then maybe that helps with releasing some of that guilt to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are probably some ways to help many of the people,
Yeah.
but there are just so many people that just feel like that they're too much of a burden to everybody else around, or that they're just carrying too much pain and they can't live with that pain no matter what anybody says. And
Yeah.
so, there are a lot of people out there that we can help,
Yeah.
but you're right. There are going to be, certain people who they're just they're withdrawn. They're they're just determined, to take their life, and it's unfortunate. But we don't know the battle
Yeah.
that somebody is fighting in their head, and that could be. We talk about mental health, but then there's also mental illness.
Yeah.
And there are people that are diagnosed by a doctor for mental illness, and then there are plenty of people who refuse to go to see a doctor, and they're diagnosed, I would say, but they don't want that stigma attached, because if they go to a doctor and they find out that they do have a mental illness, they're probably embarrassed about that, or even they don't want it to be on medication,
Yeah.
you know, even
And
though
that's
medication in one way, all those side effects, people are scared about. It's like sometimes you hear um, these commercials on TV, and it's like somebody has one condition, and then when you hear about all the other things that could be side effects, you're like, wow, why did I even go to the doctor in the first place? And I think, I, some people feel that way. They feel like, hey, you know what? Or let me tell you this too, like, um, you go to the doctor, and yeah, it's helping you in one area, but what happens if you gain 30 to 40 pounds?
yeah.
Like, then somebody's going to be struggling with that issue. And I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of, hey, you know what? I'm just going to deal with this because I've been dealing with it for so long.
Yeah.
I problem I know, rather than some of these other problems that I don't yet know.
Yeah. No, and oh, that is so true. I never even really considered that about, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't want to go on medication for a number of reasons, but I never really thought about side effects, of course. I think, pardon me, I think too, more I've forgotten being in the UK, we don't have so many ads for medications. I don't think we actually have any over here. And so I do remember daytime TV. It's like, try this. Side effects may include blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, I think I'd rather stay ill. Thank you. But it's, yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing. And how do you, and especially if you're a younger person and you start medication, that kind of pressure you might feel telling your friends about it, even though they don't need to, but, you know, or maybe it's even that fear of like, oh my God, there's something really is wrong with me. But it's just part of getting the right tools, I think, to help you live a nice life that you're supposed to be living.
Well, I mean, even like you say at work, if you start taking one medication, or there are noticeable changes, you know, let's say in your physique, and
Yeah.
it's due to medication, and explain that, then people are also afraid that maybe they won't be considered for some job assignment, because
Yes.
can they, they're on, oh, that person's crazy,
Yeah.
and I'll say that, um, so in 2000. 13,
Yeah.
my mother was actually hospitalized for having seizures. Well, she was hospitalized, and while we were in the hospital, she she had some serious seizures. Right, so they put her into a medically induced coma. All right, and they were trying to figure out what was going on with her, and she has a rare form of encephalitis. All right,
Right.
so encephalitis swelling in the brain, and now with the medication she was taking, and she was living by herself. All right, she's a very independent woman, living by herself, and actually took care of a lot of rats. She would be the person to organize things. She would pick up this person here, there, and everywhere. Right, and she was hallucinating one day, and we didn't. She might have been hallucinating a lot more, but we didn't know because she was living by herself. But somebody in her
Right.
building observed this, talked to my sister. One of my sisters took her into the emergency room, and while we were there at the hospital, she started having these seizures. So this really uh, alarmed us by the medication she was taking was making her hallucinate.
Right.
All right, slight medication. This really, what I want people to understand is that these are normal people. All right, and so I consider my mother normal, but
Yeah.
we never were hallucinating or having any outburst or anything out of the ordinary over her whole life. All right, but now when you start thinking about this a little bit deeper, it's about like the chemicals in her brain, and
Right.
she had a sister who died by suicide. Now, did they die? Was their suicide brought on by their mental health issues, or did they have mental illness? And maybe some of
Right.
that was diagnosed. So, you start wondering about like what's hereditary,
Yes.
what's hereditary, and I think a lot of this is, and I say this all the time, but um, we spend more time with the people at work and our friends than our own family, and we can
Yeah.
pick up at times what's not normal. All right,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate. My mother living by herself, there might be a lot of signs going on for a while that nobody could pick up.
Yeah.
You know, so she has since been put on some like seizure medication, and she doesn't have the liberty to drive anymore because that medication she's not allowed to drive. But
Right.
other than that, she's uh, she's she's very much with it. And she's not independent anymore because she can't be.
Mm.
But you know, um, she's living, I would say, like a normal-ish life for someone her age.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's amazing that she is, living still so independently. I just think it's really, really cool. And but you are right. How much is hereditary? Who knows? Maybe did your mom does she have stuff going on too? Maybe to a lesser degree, or what was going on with her siblings. And I really I just all I keep thinking about right at this moment is it's so good to have these conversations because I think every single conversation that happens slowly chips away at all that little stigma around it, mental health, mental illness, and, you know, and yeah, watching out for people around you. Really. When um you were telling me before about lots of uh trends in the construction industry too, that there's a lot of impact there. And I think a lot of it probably, well, maybe, I don't know how far, but, the long hours, the, heavy manual labor, sometimes being away from family, being isolated yourself. You see a lot of that kind of stuff when you're going to construction sites to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the construction industry. And for years, the construction industry has really been focused on talking about the thousand in the United States every year. About 1,000 to 1,100 workers die from construction-related injuries and illnesses. Right.
Right.
So, you know, there'll probably be somewhere around that number next year. The year after, probably somewhere around that number. And one of the things that somebody brought up in a discussion is we've had a downturn in those numbers when there's been a downturn in the economy. So does that mean we have to stop working in order to save people's lives? And I don't believe so. I think it's just maybe being more in the moment, or you know just thinking about things a little bit differently, planning the work a little bit better. Just people having a different mindset about approaching them. But
Yeah.
one of the things that's come up, I would say, and been really more on the forefront in the past decade has been suicide in the construction industry. So this is something that I don't typically like to dwell on statistics, but I just want to discuss it here. But
Yeah.
in addition to the 1,000 to 1,100 people every year that die in the construction industry from job-related injuries and illnesses, it's estimated that we're losing an additional 5,500 people in our industry to suicide, and that's everybody up the chain of command. That's laborers. It could be a superintendent, a project manager, a vice president, the CEO of a company.
Yeah.
And just like you say, it's the construction industry. I would say probably has a lot of similarities to the music industry. All
Yeah.
right. I mean, but I would say something about the construction industry. It's male dominated. All
Yeah.
right. And very, whether it's competitive or, macho, we're supposed to be very strong. It's physically demanding, like you mentioned, and people are in chronic pain. People are
Yeah.
living through back injury, and they don't want to also get to the point of where they have to admit they can no longer pick up a 40-pound bag of cement.
Right.
It's mentally well. Building a construction project is mentally demanding,
Hmm.
because I mean, a lot of times the person who is, or the company that's building the job is the low bidder. All
Yeah.
right. So now figure out how they can get the job built on schedule and hopefully under budget,
Yeah.
because you have to make, right. This, don't just build bridges for,
What?
sometimes, you know, but, it's also, and especially with some of the mega projects, it could be tunnels, it could be bridges. People move for those jobs.
Yeah.
If your company huge tunnel, it could be, I know in London, the underground, right? The
Yeah.
underground is a whole series of tunnels. So when you have to link, new line in or whatever, there may be people coming from different countries. Whether it's the company, it could be some of the workers, but you have that family separation that adds even more stress.
Yeah.
In the construction, you have a lot of veterans in the workforce.
Oh, see. I didn't even realize that. That adds a whole other layer to it too.
Sure. I believe in the construction industry, it's somewhere maybe around 13% of people when they finish uh, their military service, they go into construction.
Oh,
So
that's a lot.
if you add to long work hours, substance abuse,
Right.
if you're in pain, you may be abusing some substances. These are all different um, layers. But then there's also, you have in the construction industry a high divorce rate. When you add up all
Right.
these things, you're gonna have a high. And
Yeah.
then one of the things about construction is people have a lot of pride. All right. And, same thing, with any industry, but people are, when they're on top of their industry, you want to stay on top. All
Yeah.
right. Or you're trying to be the best business, or if you're the best in the business, maybe there's a target on your back to get into that spot. And that adds a lot of stress. I mean, for many years, people focus on getting up to the top of their industry. And then there's a whole nother layer of staying on top. And
Right.
same thing, I would say, like when you have one hit, you have to have another hit and
Yeah.
another hit and another six album,
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, yeah, and that's a lot of pressure too. I mean, kind of, especially if you've got a contract. Again, you've got to produce so many albums, get this much out, one album a year, two albums a year. It's not so much that way now, but still, it's like there's tons. And again, um, if you aren't, making money for them, what use are you then? And that, I think that is such, it's not just about, your career, it's such a personal hit too if you're not, you know, producing like you're supposed to be. Um yeah. And then all that personal stuff, obviously it's going to add just a whole other extra layer to everything. So, when we're thinking about mental health, how do we really open up these bigger conversations about it?
I think I thought I think on a construction site it can be really challenging. And I say that because if you think about I would say the average person I've seen on a construction site is in their 40s, all right? Male in their 40s, macho, all right? What do they want to hear about mental health for, right? And years ago, when we started having the conversation, I wouldn't even tell people what the topic was going to be until I actually said it. All right. And
Right.
the reason for that is because the people in the back, I've heard them say this was, oh, mental health. This is going to be real depressing, you know? And so when they have that mindset, I'm like, I don't want to start off with that mindset, And
Yeah.
so I'll tell you this, a few years back, I was on a construction site, and in the United States, we have National Construction Safety Week, which is typically the first week in May. And
Okay.
contractors, they stop work, and at the beginning of their shift, or maybe around coffee break or lunchtime, they'll have they'll take time out and they'll talk about whatever the topic is for the day. And usually it's fall protection. All right. And then over the
Okay.
past several years, it's kind of shifted over to mental health. And the reason why it was fall protection is because that's one of the leading killers in the construction industry. All right.
Mm.
So now it's been shifted to mental health. All right. So what I did on this particular day was I set up fall protection gear behind me.
Yeah.
So people thought I was going to talk about fall protection. All right. So when they're
Oh.
looking at me, they're like, oh, okay. Their mindset is on fall protection. They think they know what I'm going to say. They've heard everything before. And then when it was time for me to speak, I talked a little bit about family. I connected with the group, right? Then I talked a little bit about family, things they could relate to. And then I said to them, I said, oh, uh, I'm actually supposed to talk to you about fall protection, but I think today you guys are ready for a much different topic. And I looked
Oh.
over at the vice president who was on the job site, and his jaw dropped because he thought I was there to talk about fall protection. All right. But the safety director knew that he gave me the thumbs up because I told him beforehand, I said, if you think this group is ready to talk about mental health, just give me the thumbs up. And he gave me the
So,
thumbs up. And I switched the topic, yeah, to mental health and suicide prevention. And there were probably about 100 workers there. and we talked about mental health for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then afterwards, I had a bunch of different people come up to me and say, "Man, that I really appreciated that discussion. So and so in my family is going through something." So if I think if you can craft the conversation to just really starting the conversation, not dwelling on statistics, not reading off a sheet of paper, but
Yeah.
speaking from the heart. And if somebody can tell a personal story, then maybe people can relate and
Yeah.
think about their story. Or maybe, because if you're reading off a piece of paper and you're accusing people of having mental health conditions, they don't take that well, right?
Yeah. No, it's true.
So
But if you put
if you
something out
can,
and they can relate, then it's like,
yeah,
okay, tell me more.
yeah, and you know what? The other thing too is a lot of companies have employee assistance programs. A
Yeah.
lot of unions have member assistance programs. So when people find out that there are resources available that they are paying for, but they're not getting the benefit,
Yeah.
you know, that might help them get there. But it's really tough too in the construction industry because when people go to work at the beginning of the day, they don't know what time their shift is going to end. All right. They could be there 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. I mean, how do
Yeah.
you really schedule a therapy session? How can you set something up? And the other thing, too, is for some people, there are some trades where their overtime is time and a half and
Yeah.
others is double time. So, how
Yeah.
do you turn down double time, and not cancel your appointment? Um, because it's in our business too, it's either feast or famine,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you have to take it. The other thing that people may not be aware of is if I have somebody working for me and today they refuse overtime and I need to get that task done, I'm going to have somebody else do that work. Somebody who says yes. And then the
Yeah.
next time that comes around, I'm not going to ask somebody who says no. I'm going to go right back to the person who said yes before. So now that person is juggling, hey, if I refuse this overtime, is this going to stop all the other overtime? So
Yeah.
there are a lot of challenges.
Yeah. And I mean, then that adds to the pressure that they're already under, right? Just kind
Yeah.
of everything just kind
Yeah.
of snowballs in a way. On those employee assistant programs, then there's a lot that you're able to do kind of off hours and telephone counseling and things like that too to uh, get benefits as well, right? Because I know when
Yeah.
I
So,
was, yeah, go ahead.
no, I mean, every employee assistance program is going to be different, but some,
Yeah,
for example, if somebody is having financial challenges or somebody's going through a divorce, there may be a resource there.
yeah,
If somebody is trying to figure out um, their own will, maybe they can do that through the employee assistance program. If somebody is struggling with um, alcohol or drugs or their child is. There are a lot of parents who have kids that are struggling, and some of these employee assistance programs will help them, in different ways. And it's also important for the employer to understand what all those benefits are through the employee assistance programs.
yeah. I think too, a lot of people don't know exactly what's covered in their programs. You get the handbook when you're in when you start, and then you're like, good, put it to the side, and then you kind of forget, or you never really understood, or you didn't really realize you had that as a resource. So always go check back on your EAP because I mean it is huge actually, the a lot of the stuff that's offered. you know I mean, again, like you say, every company is different, every package is different, but it is generally there's a lot more in there than you think there is usually.
Yeah, and I mean it's just like you say, it's not an exciting topic. And when you're at work, you have a whole bunch of other things thrown at you, and this new manual that you received about your benefits. If you don't need it today, then you put it on the back burner.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, by the time you find out that you need something and that it was already covered, but you went out and you paid for it elsewhere, like legal advice, there could be some
Yeah.
legal advice that's offered in your EAP, and unfortunately, your company is paying for it, which indirectly you're kind of paying for it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's very important. It's important that everybody understands what's in it, and that it's important for the employer to understand who's utilizing it, or if
Hmm.
people are utilizing. Not exactly who's utilizing, but are
Yeah.
a lot of people utilizing? And if it's a benefit that people don't end up utilizing it, then maybe it gets canceled.
Yeah. Or is there something better that they could have in place, right? That more people would use. Mm. Do you think that now we have more mental health, problems, or if you will, or do we just talk about it more?
Uh, I think
It's a
that's
tough
a I
topic.
think that's a
It's a
great question. Uh, I think I think we're definitely talking about it more.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that I think we're also in a different political environment that also contributes to the stress.
Yeah.
Social media, that is something else that social media is a way for people to actually receive um, their news, right? And I kind of use their news in quotations because
Yeah.
you know I think I think people choose their news. If you want, if there's something you want to, if you want to get angry today, hey, turn on this channel. If you
Yeah.
want to get really angry, turn on this other channel. But I really think that a lot of these channels just kind of like feed to people into people's stress already, and
Yeah.
people, whether or not they realize it, I gotta say, I've worked in offices where on somebody's computer, they will just run the news all day long. And you know what?
Mm.
I honestly believe that that person's stress level is just so much higher after they're hearing the same news repeated every half hour, for 10 hours. And they're just getting angry about stuff. And you know what? Um, I was told one time that believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. And I
Yeah.
remember that from when I was a teenager. And so to me, what that really just tells me is if you hear something, you know what? Maybe you should investigate it a little bit more. Or maybe try to hear the other side. And I think
Yes.
that's something that's really missing in society is I think we're really divided. And no matter, what your political beliefs are, I don't think people are willing to really listen to other people's beliefs and even have that conversation. And I don't say I won't believe. I believe there are fewer people that are willing to have an open conversation instead
Yeah.
of like wait for their turn to talk and tell the other person, how they're wrong.
That's yeah, and that definitely happens a lot. They're just like, "Are you done yet? I can tell you everything you're doing wrong." I mean, and that's it. Where people were not supposed to be divided. People were not supposed to be so angry at each other or at the world. It's like there's bits of the world that, to be honest, suck, but the world is not that bad. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm delusional, but I really don't think the world's that bad. Um, but it's going to get worse if we keep letting ourselves be divided and angry and hating. It doesn't serve anything. That's where I get passionate. I'm like, God, just be nice to each other. So,
Yeah. I'm based in the New York City area, and I've traveled to different parts of the country, and people think, or people already have, some preconceived thoughts about somebody when they're like, "Oh, this guy's from New York." All right,
Right.
now I'm in Texas. Hey, this guy's from New York. You're nothing like us. And the funny
Right.
thing is that no matter where you go in the country, I really believe that we're all very similar. We all go to work to put food on the table for our families. We
Yeah.
all enjoy going to, whether it's our kids' dance recitals, sporting events, or just, being with them on the weekends and just having fun. And I think that people lose sight of that. I think that we're very similar in so many different ways, but it just seems like we're too divided. And I think that that's really um, like social media.
Yeah.
I think people use it, um, for good stuff, but also too, then I think one of my friends, I think, or some people I know, I'll say, is they look on social media and they'll see somebody that has a new car. They'll see
Right.
somebody post that, hey, they just came back from Disney World, that they just bought a new house. Well, you know what? That family is about to file for bankruptcy, right? You can't see everything that's behind those photos. And you know what? That same
Yes.
family might be going through, divorce, or they're getting separated or whatever. And
Yeah.
so it's like, if you will look on, any social media, everything is not perfect. Are people going to post their worst day? Not
No.
usually, you
Nope.
know? So I
Not
think
usually.
people look at that and then they compare their life and they're like, oh, everything is going so great for the Johnsons or
Yeah.
whoever. And then why can't I be better? Oh, my job is terrible. This person. And I think a lot of people just fake it,
Yeah.
and it's like, it really, you know, we really we we should be happy with who we are to a degree, and
Yeah.
strive to be better. But better doesn't mean that you have a bigger bank account, or you know what I mean. Better can just, and I tell my kids that I want them to be successful. Now,
Yeah.
successful doesn't mean that they're a millionaire or a billionaire. Successful is that they're meeting their goals. Do they
Yeah.
want to be a veterinarian? Do they want to have their own landscaping company? Do they want to whatever? Do they want to just be a productive member of society? What do they
Yeah.
want? What are their goals?
Yeah. No, and I completely agree. And it's kind of defining what success is for yourself, right? And whatever, it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't just mean biggest house, biggest bank balance, whatever, most beautiful wife. Like, it doesn't, that stuff at the end of the day, it's like, it's fluffy. You want to go deeper, you know, into finding that true happiness, right? And I do, social media to me is kind of funny because I agree, people will only post, not only, but like say 95% of the time, only post their glossiest, most happy, delightful moments, or they'll put a happy spin on it. And, if I've been having a rough time, I generally don't post about it. You know, I might, when I put a post up the other day, that was like, go get your iron checked because I almost died. But, um, but that was more like, go, go see your doctor and check in with yourself. That makes sure you're okay. It wasn't a downer post. And then sometimes, when you're just having those kind of rough days and maybe you want to vent, maybe at the same time you just don't want to be a downer for people. You don't want to put that stuff out there, right? And so I think some of it's just about, not putting more down stuff out, but I also think there needs to be, and I think it's shifting this way too in social media, is more authenticity of, you know, the real world, what's going on, your real world, what's going on. you know? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've certainly moved away from some social media
Mm.
because I don't necessarily want to see what people are, having for dessert every day, you
Oh,
know.
okay,
But
don't check out my
so-
page. No. Just kidding. I know it's usually my
no,
breakfast that I take pictures of, but
yeah, no, it's you know, I think it can be great to be connected with people on social media and check in with them every once in a while, you know.
yeah.
Um, but I think it's and I know I already said it, but you know, it's believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see, right? So if it's like, not everything's perfect, and something too, like, hey, you know what? If my neighbor's house is bigger than mine, or my best friend's house is nicer than mine, like, who cares?
Be happy.
Like, I mean, it's
Yay.
yeah, it's what, if some people are successful, and the other thing too is, how did they get to be successful? That's what you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like, to me, if somebody is successful, all right, I am focused more on how did they get to be successful. Like, is
Yeah.
this person truly a good person? Is this person, did they, did they really cut corners to get to be that place? Did
Yeah.
they, put other people in a really bad position, and not pay them for their services? Not whatever the case is. I think that's certainly something to just be aware of.
Yes. Oh, I agree. And um yeah, and when you're just doing your best, and that should be where where your happiness comes from. I mean, and truly, like you say, you've not got the whole story seeing anything online. And if you just keep that in mind, then maybe it can help with not getting so overwhelmed by all the stuff that you see, whether it is socials or the news or whatever it is, or, you know, and probably believe even less than half of what you see now with all the AI stuff coming out. But, you know, it's, it is, I think, and taking a step back and kind of reflecting on what you see and how it makes you feel. And is that something you really want to consume more of or less of, or not at all? Um, I kind of read the news on my phone on Apple News. I don't watch the news otherwise. I'm probably very behind in a lot of things, let's be real. But it is, for me, working through PTSD and everything else, it's too much for me right now. So I kind of put that little protective bubble around myself at the same time, but that's just to kind of keep me in a good headspace, because I have to focus on that for myself and for my son and everything.
Yeah, I think again, people choose their news, right? So and I guess too, to a degree, with that said, you could maybe choose how happy you're going to be today by how much of that news you're consuming, right? So I think, as far as mental health, you know, it's, if you're getting angry by watching something on TV, maybe you should watch less of it. And it's like, sometimes I hear people, oh, do you know what's going on? And blah, blah, blah. Or, I'll meet people from around the country and like, oh, I can't believe what's going on in New York. And it's like, have you ever been to New York? Like,
Yeah.
you are getting, a few clips on the news from what you're watching in Idaho.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna judge the whole situation from your news stream. It's like, I don't know. So I think it's important to, to travel a bit, to learn from yourself, to make some of your own observations. And I think that's part of our problem, is that we rely on other people to feed us information, and a lot of times that information's not good, or it's not healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so maybe just having more of a reality check checking your perspective, checking your mindset, maybe that's a good place to start. What you're consuming
Sure.
overall,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah. Absolutely.
it's too it's too much sometimes. Oh, I don't know. Well, we talked, before about how having suicide close to you and your family, it really shapes who you become as a person. And one thing that you were telling me about that I think is absolutely incredible is how you go to all these job sites and you speak about it. You've got your little resources that I hope you have with you today, your little chips. And do you want to
Uh,
tell us about all these things that you do? Because you go and you spread awareness. I mean,
I'm sorry about that. I just didn't have them right next to me. But
no.
yeah, so what we've done in the past was we had different hard hat stickers, and I can explain this as well. So there's in the United States we have 988. It's a national crisis hotline,
Yeah.
and so this hard hat sticker came about because there are a lot of people who aren't aware about the resources for 988, and over three-quarters of phone calls that go to 911 in the United States are actually mental health related. So 911 should really be set up for if somebody needs a police officer or an ambulance.
Yeah.
Okay, so if something serious of that nature is going on, you need to get people to the doorstep of where you are that are trained. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so 988 was established um, to provide resources on the mental health side. So it's a national crisis hotline, and specifically when it comes to mental health, if somebody has some mental health related, if they are contemplating suicide, they could certainly call up that phone number 988. And in the United States, you may actually find signs on the side of bridges that say, life is worth living, contact 988, or there's some sort of message there. And
Right.
sometimes they might even have a phone that's right there as well. So we came up with these stickers
Mhm.
that we made into what looked like poker chips. And there is the AGC, which is the Associated General Contractors in the United States. They've actually come up with coins like these, which we based our idea on, and they call them hope coins.
Okay.
All right, so there's hope, right, and I think that's very important, the hope part. Now, what we did was on the back side of this coin, we put a QR code so people can get to the 988 website. All right. So
Perfect.
it's just one more resource where people don't say, oh, I don't know where to go, you know.
Yeah.
And, when we're on job sites, when I speak at conferences, I give these out. Now, what I say about these hope coins, they're really conversation starters. So
Right.
I was talking to a worker on a job site this past year, and I have this sticker on my hard hat. And I noticed he had one on his hard hat. So what I did was I said to him, I said, oh, that sticker that you have on your hard hat, we recently made them into hope coins. And on the back side is a QR code. And I handed it to him, and he stopped me right there. And he said, Rob, my best friend died by suicide last year. And it just started and all I did at that point was I just stood back and I listened because he was probably waiting for an opportunity to let this out,
Yeah.
you know? And so I think it's important to raise the awareness. But the other thing with these coins are, when I give them out to people, they go in their pocket, or for some people they might go on their desk, and they might put them like right by their monitor. So it's, again,
Right.
they're seeing it all the time. We've had these made into keychains, so I have it on my keychain. My son
Yeah.
has it on his keychain. So it's a constant reminder for a lot of people. And we often, when we speak on job sites, one of my colleagues, also David Wesson in our in Florida, he speaks on the same topic as well. And so he decided to get some of those coins made. But we also recently, this year, we did something called a hike for hope.
Yeah.
and And so, what we did with that was, this spring there were several locations around the country: Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, West Virginia, Arizona, New York. I don't want to forget any other place, but there may have been a few places I forgot. Okay. And so we were trying to do a walk all on the same day.
Right.
And for logistics reasons, or places where they actually wanted to have the walk, they had to do it on a different date. Or maybe they just need a little more time and planning to get all the resources together. But it was a phenomenal event. And in these, like in Florida alone, I believe they had 6 different locations that were walking throughout the state all on the same day,
Oh,
to
wow.
raise awareness. And in New York, what we did was, we we had police officers there. We had firefighters, veterans, student athletes. We also had cadets from West Point, which is the United States Military Academy, and they were dressed up in uniform. And then from the construction industry, we we had probably 90% of the people there were from the construction industry. And we had so many companies that sponsored the event that we could hardly fit their logos on the back of the t-shirts. I mean, that became a
Oh,
real
wow.
challenge, trying to figure out how do the logos get put on there, because I think it's very important. The logos to me were very important, because when one company sees that somebody else is sponsoring it,
Yeah.
they think, hey, is this something that we should be involved in?
Yeah.
Or if one association is involved in it, and they're getting their logo on the website, then another association sees that and says, hey,
Hmm.
is this something we should be involved in? And then, you know what, after a
Yeah.
while, it just became very overwhelming with all the phone calls, the emails, the text messages. But I think we certainly got a lot of momentum, a lot of great momentum on this topic. Um, and I think it's just, there's, like I said before, there's a lot of hope. People afterwards, after the event, they said, when are we doing it again next year? And I
Cool.
was just overwhelmed, with all the planning and everything that went into it the first time. I said, please just give me a little time to catch up here.
Okay,
But
wait, but I've got a
then,
suggestion though. Okay? For all those logos, you need to make sweatpants too.
oh boy, sweatpants. Okay, all right.
Have
Well,
your shirt and sweatpants, or like a shirt and a hoodie, maybe a hoodie. Maybe it has to go
okay.
down the sleeves, maybe the front. Got to cover it,
It's a good problem. A good
right?
problem to have. But I thought your suggestion was with all those logos, to try to recruit people from each of those organizations to help with the planning. You know,
Well, yeah,
but
okay, that's the other part too. Don't let it
so
all fall on you, right?
yeah. No, we had a good group of people, but I mean, again, with all the people who reached out to us, it just became overwhelming, because we all have full-time jobs, and some of us travel and so forth. But one of the exciting things that I will say is, after the event, There were so many people that reached out and they did say how exciting it was, and I was really kind of caught off guard because I would never have expected anybody to say how exciting it was to have a suicide prevention walk, right?
Yeah.
It's and but we did it. We really did. We did a great job of making it even a family event. Because the one in New York, we actually had it at a location that's about an hour north of New York City, where they have like a small zoo there as well.
Oh, cool.
And so as part of the walk, and I have to take some ownership on this, but I did a poor job lining up the arrows and the signs, so some people didn't quite make it to the zoo that day.
Oh.
But but the good thing was before the event, we all assembled at a field right there. It's called Bear Mountain,
Okay.
and so we started off. We had some announcements, and there were plenty of tables. But we also had on the field we had cornhole set up. We had soccer balls. We had wiffle ball, and so people were getting excited even before the event and playing and so forth. And then after the event, they came back and we hung out for a little while. And there were some people afterwards that reached out to me. And one guy before the event, he was like, "Oh, I can't believe my wife is making me go to this event." And I said, "Well, hey, thank you for your support, right?"
Yeah.
you know. And so then after the event, he said, "Wow, that was really good." And I said, "You didn't even want to go to it." And he said, "No, no, no. The way everything was planned, and I just thought it was going to be a lot further away, and blah blah blah,
Aw.
whatever." So it wasn't an area that really it wasn't convenient for a lot of people. But the way I look at it is, it was a great place to unplug for a while.
Yeah.
It was a great place to kind of like really just be with each other, be away from our daily stresses, be with nature,
Yeah.
and also too, people who are struggling with their own mental health. It's not really convenient for them, you
No.
know. So I just kind of, and recently somebody said to me, "Hey, next year if you want me to go to it, you should have it near my house." And I'm like, this really isn't about you.
Yeah.
And I'll have it wherever people think it's going to draw the biggest crowd, or
Yeah.
get to the people we need to get to. Or if we need to have it in multiple locations, then I would love to have other people get involved and really roll it out to different locations. So
Yeah. And I mean, you had a huge turnout too, though, didn't you? You had like, what did you say? How many people?
it was probably about 600 people.
Like,
Yeah,
that's big. For the first
sure.
year, just some guy. No, you're not just some
Yeah,
guy, but you know what I mean, though. You, I
sure.
mean, incredible. That's a huge turnout, right?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I found exciting was I had these yard signs that said "Hike for Hope" and it had a QR code,
Yeah.
and I put it near some off ramps of a local highway. All right,
Hmm.
and so I would get phone calls because my phone number was on the website,
Oh,
and it would be like Friday. I totally forgot about all that. I figured my email address was on there, and that's a good way to get in touch with me. But I got a phone call from a police officer
oh,
who wasn't upset that I put the sign up there, but was actually happy because they lost a police officer by suicide in their precinct. And
oh,
so, I got this phone call one Friday night, and she says, "Hey, I saw your sign. I would love to go. Do you mind if I invite the police officer's family?" I said, "Absolutely." I said,
yeah.
"This is open to everybody who wants to participate." And then somebody else who called me up was was a lacrosse coach
Oh,
at a high school. And so she calls me up and she says, "I want to bring our varsity and junior varsity teams." I said, "Wow, that would be amazing." And so she's like, "Can I bring everybody?" I said, "You can bring as many people
yes.
as you want, you know? And so, no, it really turned out to be something, special. And for a lot of those people, I feel like if I reach back to them and say, hey, we're doing this next year on this date, I feel like a lot of people will bring even more people.
Yeah.
And so to me, we raised a lot of money. And the money really isn't as important as the people we can reach. Yeah, we
Yes.
need to have money to promote programs, to do training, to have, people on staff. That's extremely important. But I'm always concerned about the one person that we could leave behind. And
Mhm.
and I'll tell you, I've coached sports for many years when my kids were younger,
Yeah.
and I was always more focused on the kid on the team that had, I will say, like the least honed skills than the
Right.
best player on the team. All right.
Hmm.
Because I was always concerned about that kid being forgotten about,
Right.
and then that kid just going down the wrong road. So
Yeah.
I think that, we try to cast the net wide, and we try to bring in as many people as we possibly can. And these were our neighbors, and that's what I really loved is some people drove several hours to be at the event,
Oh,
and
wow.
and it really turned out to be something special. And I think a lot of the people who left, they were just so happy about how, I mean, that day started off pouring rain at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, I woke up and it's pouring out. And I'm like, oh man, months and months of planning. What's going to happen today? And we had a tremendous turnout. And at the end, people were leaving saying, wow, this was really special. And what my hope is that all those people who left feeling that way will return next year and get the word out to other people and just make it
Yeah.
a much bigger event.
Yeah. I think you've set something up that is going to get much, much bigger. And it's exciting, and it's life changing, and it's life saving when you get down to the nitty gritty of it. It's 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 truly it's incredible. So I think for me, I always think the biggest thing is try and leave people better than you found them. Try and, you know, take a moment just to listen. And if you see those signs, because they might be subtle, but they're there, that somebody maybe is just internally screaming out for help, you know, for somebody just to be a little bit compassionate, a little bit calmer with them, show that they're cared for. And the other thing I even have to remind myself is, as lonely as you may feel sometime, you are not alone ever, 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 ever. And you do matter, even when for whatever reason you feel that maybe you don't. You do matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Rob, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I would say through email.
Through email? Okay.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn and that kind of thing?
Yeah, LinkedIn, absolutely. I mean, I would say if there are people out there that want to connect on LinkedIn, I would love it because you know if if people who care about a topic want to see what else is going on out there. I mean, there are so many people that I'm connected with that I've learned so much from
Yeah.
and have opened my eyes up and have helped me understand things a little bit better or differently or just really make me aware of different events, make me aware of what's going on. And you know my line of business, I'm really on the safety end
Hmm.
in construction, risk management and safety. And it's often said that there are no secrets in safety, meaning people steal each other's ideas all the time, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So I think that this is certainly a topic where we want to share ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see what other people are doing. So if there are people that are doing things, and I'm connected with people all around the world, and there are
Yeah.
plenty of people, in England that are doing certain things. I see there's someone who goes to a lot of car shows, and he promotes mental health and suicide prevention at car shows. I love the idea. I
Oh,
used to have a
cool.
classic car, and so there are different ways we can spread the message in our different networks,
Mm-hmm.
and get people to um, have the conversation in different locations. But yeah, no, if people want to reach out, I think LinkedIn is a perfect venue, and again, people can see what's being posted, or are the people that I'm connected with, and maybe we're already connected, or uh, maybe we have a lot in common, and
Yeah,
we can continue the conversation.
absolutely. You said to me that you're not an expert in mental health, but you care and you are always looking to find ways to help people and to connect people. And I think that does make you an expert. So, honestly, Rob, thank you so much for being here with us today. It means a lot to me, and you know, it makes a difference. You are making a difference. So just keep going.
Thank you very much for having me on. This has been a great experience, and
Uh,
I am honored. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We will talk to you soon then. See you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Healthy Metal Hippie podcast. If you're looking for more, head to healthymetalhippie.com and let's connect. Until next time, wishing you a magical week. See you later.